Chapter 1. The chicken who disappointed a kingdom. When all 12 bells of St. Orizon Cathedral rang at once, 20,000 people dropped to their knees. Margot Vale remained standing. It was not rebellion. Not yet. The onion seller behind her had shoved forward to see the sacred procession, and Margot's right knee had caught in the torn hem of her wine-red gown. By the time she freed it, the bishop had lifted the crystal reliquary above his head, the choir had reached its highest note, and the kingdom's holiest finger bone had slipped from its velvet cushion. The bone bounced down 3 marble steps, crossed the purple carpet, tapped the polished boot of Crown Prince Lucian, and came to rest against Margot's scuffed shoe. 20,000 people held their breath. Margot looked down. The little white bone was narrow, hollow, and cut cleanly at one end. She had spent 19 years in traveling theaters. She had made skeletons from boiled sheep joints, murder victims from sacks of flour, and a saint's severed hand from wax, wire, and a glove stolen from a tax collector. She knew bones. More specifically, she knew supper. She bent, picked up the relic, and raised it to her nose. Bishop Severus made a strangled sound from the high platform. Lucian stared at her with an expression she remembered too well, fear dressed as authority. 3 years earlier, he had hidden in the back row of her theater and laughed until tears ran down his face. He had told her that her jokes made the palace feel less like a tomb. He had kissed her behind a painted forest and promised that, prince or no prince, he would always choose the woman who made him honest. 2 months earlier, after his older brother died and left him heir to the throne, he had chosen honesty's quieter cousin. Lady Alina Dacre was gentle, devout, well-born, and famous for never embarrassing anyone at dinner. Lucian had told Margot he still loved her, but a future king could not marry a woman whose comedy made citizens laugh at crowns. The same humor he once adored now looked, from the throne, like a knife. That morning his guards had torn down Margot's stage because laughter was forbidden during the sacred festival. Now he mouthed one word at her. Kneel. Margot's heart hurt with the old, humiliating ache. A sensible woman would have placed the relic back in its box. A sensible woman would have bowed her head and protected what little remained of her livelihood. Margot smelled the bone again. This is chicken, she said. A woman near the front gasped. Somewhere in the crowd a child whispered, I knew saints had wings. Margot turned the bone between her fingers. And judging by the marrow, the chicken died deeply disappointed. Silence cracked. The first laugh came from the child. Another answered from the back. Then a fruit seller coughed into his hand, his shoulders shaking. People tried to smother their laughter because soldiers stood along the square with silver-tipped pikes, but forbidden laughter had always been Margot's most loyal audience. Bishop Severus raised both arms. He was a broad, soft man inside layers of purple silk, with a round face made for smiling over other people's donations. At that moment, his face resembled a plum being boiled alive. Blasphemer, he cried. Lucian descended from the platform. His pale ceremonial coat was embroidered with golden lions. His blonde hair, once charmingly untidy, had been trained into royal obedience. Kneel, Margot, he said under his breath. I can tell them grief unbalanced you. My grief has excellent balance. It has been standing on my chest for 2 months. For once in your life, do not turn this into a joke. For once in your reign, do not turn lunch into a religion. His cheeks colored. 2 cathedral guards seized her arms. Margot did not struggle. She was brave in the practical ways available to an underpaid playwright, but she was not foolish enough to mistake 2 strong men for a philosophical disagreement. She opened her hand to return the bone. A furious honk blasted from the Pilgrim Road. The sound was part trumpet, part rusty gate, and entirely personal. People scattered. A large gray goose charged into the square with its wings spread low, and its orange beak pointed like a lance. Its feathers were gray along the back, white at the throat, and untidy everywhere else. A torn strip of purple cloth hung from its beak. Bishop Severus saw it and screamed. Stop that creature! The goose ignored 6 guards, a flower girl, and the laws of the church. It aimed directly at the bishop. Severus tried to retreat, stepped on his robe, and spun sideways. The goose caught his trailing hem and pulled. The most powerful churchman in Valdoria fell backward into a copper basin, filled with blessed rose petals. This time the entire square laughed. Grayling! Margot shouted. The goose released the bishop. Something metallic bulged in its throat. With a cough of profound disgust, it spat a black iron key onto the marble. Margot recognized the three-serpent seal on its handle. The bishop's private treasury. Before she could move, Grayling snatched the key again and ran through the line of cathedral soldiers. It crossed the square toward a newly arrived column of black-armored riders. At their head sat Gabriel Wolfe, the excommunicated commander of the North. Margot had heard all the stories. He had held Frost Pass with 3,000 soldiers against an army 10 times that size. He had once received the kneeling thanks of an entire city. The church had named him its Holy Wolf, then named him a heretic when he refused to surrender northern grain during a famine. He was 29, broad-shouldered and straight-backed on a black horse. Wind pushed thick black hair from his forehead. His face was severely handsome, all clean lines and controlled stillness, with dark brown eyes that appeared almost black beneath the shadow of his brow. A faint mark at the end of his left eyebrow looked less like a flaw than punctuation. His armor bore no jewels. A silver holy banner flew behind him, the symbol that granted him command in the king's name. Grayling stopped at his horse and dropped the treasury key on his boot. Margot tore one arm free. The second guard grabbed her hair. She drove her heel down on his foot, twisted loose, and ran. The key lay inches from the horse's foreleg. She dived for it. The horse reared. Margot saw an iron-shod hoof, heard someone shout, and felt a powerful arm close around her waist. The world swung. A heartbeat later, she was sitting sideways across Gabriel Wolfe's saddle, pressed against a breastplate cold enough to steal her breath. His right arm held her securely. His left hand controlled the frightened horse. "Put me down," she said. "The horse will crush you. That key may save people. If the horse crushes you, the key will remain exactly where it is. Your horse has a cruel sense of priorities." He looked down at her. Up close, his restraint was more intimidating than anger. He smelled faintly of leather, cold air, and pine smoke. His hand spanned most of her waist. Through wool and linen she could feel its heat. Grayling honked at them. Gabriel leaned from the saddle, picked up the key, and placed it in Margot's palm. "Now tell me what this opens." Bishop Severus climbed out of the rose basin with petals stuck to his hat. "Commander Wolfe, that woman has defiled a holy relic. By the authority of the sacred banner, I order you to surrender her." The square quieted. Everyone knew what the banner meant. The church had blessed Gabriel beneath it. The king had granted him command beneath it. Without it, he was not the North's lawful protector. He was a condemned man leading an armed column into the capital. Gabriel drew his sword. Severus smiled. The blade swept backward. The silver flagstaff broke in two. The banner floated to the ground and landed over Grayling. The goose fought its way out, turned 3 circles on the expensive silver cloth, and settled down for a nap. Gabriel sheathed his sword. "The banner no longer commands me." He turned his horse. One arm remained around Margot as he carried her, the treasury key, and the disappointing chicken bone away from a kingdom, still trying to remember whether it was supposed to kneel. Chapter 2. The guardian of the pilgrim road. Gabriel's camp stood beyond the old western wall. Margot rode in front of him all the way there, painfully aware of his forearm across her middle. She attempted to sit farther forward. The horse stepped into a rut, and she landed back against Gabriel's chest. "You may hold me less firmly," she said. "You may stop throwing yourself beneath cavalry. We have known each other for 10 minutes, and already you demand that I abandon a lifelong habit." The hard plane of his chest shifted behind her. She suspected he had almost laughed. Grayling ran beside the horse, pausing only to investigate a cabbage cart and frighten a tax clerk into an alley. Margot had first met the goose the previous winter on the Pilgrim Road. Her theater company had been traveling south after Lucian quietly arranged for every respectable hall in the capital to refuse them. Snow covered the fields. Poor pilgrims left their last copper coins in roadside shrines, praying for shelter at the next monastery. Near dusk, Margot saw a butcher stealing those coins. He was twice her width and carried 3 knives. He had also caught a gray goose beside the shrine and was forcing it into a sack. Margot could have kept walking. Her company had 1 loaf left. Her boots leaked. The butcher looked exactly like a man who enjoyed teaching lessons to women who interfered. Then she remembered the cracked hands of an old couple who had placed 2 coppers at that shrine. "Put down the goose," she told him. The butcher laughed. "Why? Is it your husband?" Margot swung her iron skillet into his backside. He howled and turned. She kicked the back of his knee. He fell into a snow-filled ditch, and the goose burst from the sack with murder in its small black eyes. It pecked the butcher in 3 places no man wished to discuss with his physician. While he rolled in the snow, the goose collected the stolen coins one by one and returned them to the shrine. Moonlight spread across the road. The goose's shadow was not a goose. It was a seated gray wolf, tall and watchful, with pointed ears and a long tail curled around its paws. The wolf's shadow lifted its muzzle toward the moon. The goose itself lowered its head and ate dead grass, apparently unwilling to let ancient mystery interfere with supper. Old Maud, the company's senior actress, later explained that some pilgrim roads had guardians older than the church. They borrowed the shape of common animals, protected gifts left by the poor, and hunted anyone who stole from those unable to fight back. They could not be owned. They could not be summoned. They remembered every debt. Margot named the guardian Grayling. It refused to answer. She tried Lord Greyfeather, Saint Honk, and his furious Grace. It ignored those too. Then she offered Peas. They had been uneasy allies ever since. At camp, Gabriel led Margot into a command tent furnished with a long table, maps, and 1 locked iron chest. No gold. No icons. No skulls or black candles of the kind popular ballads assigned to heretics. Grayling dragged the broken banner inside, arranged it beside the table, and lay down. Gabriel removed his gauntlets. The key. Margot set it on the map. The 3-serpent mark belongs to Bishop Severus's private treasury. Every town visited by the relic procession has been charged a new absolution tax. Families who cannot pay lose grain, tools, or years of their children's labor. How do you know? Actors travel behind tax collectors. We arrive slowly enough to meet the people they leave crying. He picked up the chicken bone. With a narrow knife, he scraped away a layer of perfumed wax. Tiny air holes appeared in the pale surface. Chicken, he said. At last, a military expert confirms my findings. Why would a road guardian steal the bishop's key? Because the bishop stole from the poor. Grayling once chased a monk for 3 hours after he took a widow's eggs. The monk climbed a bell tower to escape and confessed to 6 additional sins nobody had asked about. Gabriel glanced at the sleeping goose. Reliable investigator. Biased against shiny objects. Otherwise excellent. An officer entered. Captain Bran was a square, graying man whose expression suggested he had been born disappointed in other people's planning. Cathedral guards have surrounded the camp, he said. Severus demands the woman and the relic. He says refusal makes every northern soldier a traitor. They came quickly, Margot said. Gabriel closed his hand over the key. Because the key is more dangerous than the bone. He placed a short dagger before Margot. Can you use this? I have killed 4 kings on stage. Off stage. I struck a butcher with a skillet. Then take the skillet. He was not joking. Captain Bran returned from the cook wagon with a black iron pan and handed it over as solemnly as a ceremonial sword. The cathedral guards entered the camp moments later. Their commander, Burin, had a narrow mouth and the confident cruelty of a man who had rarely met consequences. He pointed at Margot. Take her. The first guard reached for her arm. She moved aside. The second caught a fistful of her hair. Pain burst across her scalp. Margot had learned to endure insults, hunger, heartbreak, and critics who used the word shrill whenever a woman spoke above a whisper. Being dragged by the hair belonged to a different category. She turned and struck the guard squarely across the nose with the skillet. The sound was magnificent. He sat down in the mud, both hands over his face. Forgive me, Margot said. I usually hit only customers who have purchased a ticket. A third guard drew his sword. A black shape moved past her. Gabriel blocked the blade with one forearm, seized the front of the man's breastplate, and lifted him clear off the ground. The guard flew into a barrel of laundry water. His helmet floated to the surface like a bull reconsidering its profession. Gabriel stepped in front of Margot. He did not raise his voice. She is under my protection. Touch her again and answer to me. Something warm and unsteady moved through Margot's chest. Lucian had promised to protect her too. His protection had required her to speak more softly, write Kinder Kings, avoid political jokes, wear quieter colors, and become so small no crown could feel threatened. Gabriel stood between her and armed men without asking her to surrender a single part of herself. That distinction was dangerously attractive. Burin wiped laundry water from his sleeve. The church made you wolf. No, Gabriel said. It made a weapon. I made myself. The cathedral men withdrew, but they did not leave. At sunset, silver braziers appeared around the camp. Soldiers poured pale powder into every flame. Captain Brand's face tightened. Consecrated silver. Margot looked at Gabriel. For the first time, she wondered how much truth lived inside the stories about the Moon Wolf. Chapter 3. The Wolf Beneath the Commander. The first silver bell rang at midnight. Gabriel stood over a map. His fingers tightened on the table until the wood creaked. Margot saw black veins rise beneath the skin of his neck. "Leave," he said. "The cathedral soldiers are outside. Use the rear trench." A second bell sounded. Gabriel's breathing changed. His pupils narrowed into dark vertical lines. Margot was afraid. Fear usually released jokes from her the way a boot released water from wet ground. If she made other people laugh first, they could not see how badly she wanted to run. She nearly asked whether becoming a wolf made him more or less fond of furniture. Then she saw pain shake his hand. For once, she did not use another person's suffering as a shield. "Tell me how to help." "Go." "Something besides that." The third bell rang. Gabriel struck the table, as if it were the only thing holding him upright. Black hair spread over the back of his hands. His nails lengthened into claws. "During the last year of the Bone War," he said, each word forced through clenched teeth, "the church poured wolf blood into 12 orphan children. They wanted holy soldiers who would never retreat." Margot stopped breathing. "Only one survived. The banner helped me hold human form. It also let them command me with silver bells." "You broke it today." "Yes." "For a woman you had just met?" His eyes shone in the dark. "For the right not to kneel." The tent wall split open. 3 cathedral assassins entered with silver chains. 2 cast their chains around Gabriel. The metal smoked against his skin. He fell to one knee. The third man came for Margot. She backed into an overturned stool. He seized the front of her gown. "The bishop wants you alive," he whispered. He did not say beautiful. Margot's stomach turned to ice. She drove her forehead into his nose. He shouted and released her. She grabbed a brass candlestick, hit his wrist, then kicked behind his knee. When he fell, she trapped his throat beneath the candlestick's crossbar. "Tell the bishop I have never built my life around remaining decorative." Behind her, a chain snapped. A massive black wolf crashed into the other assassins. Its shoulders stood nearly level with Margot's chest. Its coat was midnight black, but its eyes were Gabriel's, dark brown, intelligent, and furious. The wolf did not tear flesh. It struck one man into a tent pole and hurled the other through the opening. Then it smashed the assassin's silver jar beneath one paw. The soldiers outside fled. The wolf turned to Margot. Hunger and pain lived in its stare, but so did terrible restraint. She slowly lowered the candlestick. "Gabriel." Its ears flattened. "I know it is you." The wolf took one step, then another. Every instinct Margot possessed advised her to run. She remained where she was and extended one hand. The wolf stopped with its nose inches from her palm. Hot breath crossed her fingers. It sniffed, blinked, then turned and pressed its broad back against her knees. "You want me to climb on?" Its tail struck the ground once. "As a man, you barely speak. As a wolf, you are full of opinions." Fire arrows landed across the camp. Margot climbed onto his back. The wolf raced between burning tents, carrying her through smoke while northern soldiers formed an orderly retreat. Grayling ran alongside with something bright in its beak. The stolen silver bell rang with every step. Gabriel stumbled. "Grayling, drop that!" Margot shouted. The goose ran faster. A rough voice vibrated beneath Margot's knees. "Does it always do this?" She nearly fell off. "You can speak." "Poorly. It likes shiny things. That shiny thing is killing me. Every friendship has an area for improvement." The wolf made a sound suspiciously like a human groan. They escaped through an old drainage gate and sheltered in the abandoned Royal Theatre. Dawn entered through holes in the roof. When Gabriel returned to human form, Margot found him a costume in the property room. He emerged wearing a red velvet king's cloak over a linen shirt and a paper crown tilted across his black hair. He was barefoot, exhausted, and still imposing enough to make the fake throne appear nervous. Margot folded her arms. "Laugh," he said, "and sleep outside." "I am not laughing. Your eyes are." "My eyes have never accepted royal censorship." He advanced. Margot retreated until her back touched a wooden forest. Gabriel placed one hand beside her head. His face lowered close to hers. "Why did you stay?" "You saved me." "That is not an answer." "I would not leave someone alone in that much pain." Something in his expression shifted. The space between them felt charged. Margot smelled rain, smoke, and the clean forest scent that seemed to cling to him even in a ruined theater. The king's cloak slipped from one shoulder. She caught it and touched the dark wolf-shaped brand above his collarbone. Gabriel closed his hand around her wrist. He did not push her away. His thumb rested over her pulse. "Do not touch me from pity." "It is not pity." "Then what is it?" Her heartbeat was loud enough to answer for her. A joke waited at the back of her throat, ready to rescue her from honesty. She let it die there. "I have not decided yet." His thumb moved once along the inside of her wrist. The small motion sent heat to her elbow. Outside, Grayling honked in triumph. The goose entered dragging the silver bell, followed by 3 cathedral soldiers covered in ditch mud. Gabriel closed his eyes. Margot laughed until she had to lean against the painted tree. Chapter 4. The lie that ended a war. The abandoned Royal Theatre had once seated 1,000 people. Its roof leaked, weeds grew across the stage, and pigeons occupied the royal box with more dignity than the last 3 kings. Margot loved it on sight. Stages never pretended not to lie. They invited an audience to believe for a little while, then raised the lights and admitted everything. Old Maud emerged from beneath the stage, holding a pair of dressmaking shears. "Which fool stepped through my tomb?" She was 63, broad-hipped, bright-eyed, and wrapped in a brown wool robe over her nightdress. Her silver-brown hair was pinned in a knot strong enough to withstand cavalry. When she recognized Margot, she embraced her. Then she noticed Gabriel in the paper crown. "You finally brought a man home. He is the excommunicated commander of the North. If he pays rent, the Pope can sleep in the costume loft." Grayling marched past with the silver bell. Maud caught the bell's clapper between her shears. Silence returned. Margot placed the chicken bone and treasury key on the stage. Maud's smile vanished. She sat on the edge of the boards. For a long while only pigeons spoke. 30 years ago, Maud said at last, the Bone War had lasted 7 years. North and South each claimed to possess the true remains of St. Orzin. Each claimed God wanted the other side destroyed. Villages burned. Children starved. Soldiers forgot why they were killing and kept doing it from habit. At 23, Maud had been a palace property maker. The old queen summoned her in secret and ordered her to create a relic both armies would recognize. The queen bribed priests on both sides to announce a shared miracle. St. Orzin had reunited his own bones and commanded peace. "I used the wing bone of a kitchen hen," Maud said. The bird truly did die disappointed. It ate an entire royal pudding, fled the cook, and drowned in a well. Margot wanted to laugh. She could not. The false relic stopped the war? The armies ceased fighting the next morning. Prisoners came home within the week. A treaty was signed before winter. Maud picked up the little bone. Her lined hands trembled. "I told myself one lie had saved thousands of lives. Perhaps it did. But 10 years ago, Severus learned the truth. He did not expose it. He turned the relic into a tax seal. He told the old king that whoever controlled pilgrimage controlled the kingdom." Margot wished the story were simpler. She wanted Severus to have invented the fraud for pure greed. She wanted one clean villain, one innocent crowd, and one brave speech that solved everything before supper. Instead, the bone had saved lives before it stole bread. "A good result does not make a lie good forever," Gabriel said. Maud looked at him. "No, but it makes confession harder." The treasury key opened an old iron cabinet in the theater basement. Inside lay a letter bearing the dead queen's seal. It described the relic's making and begged future keepers to reveal the truth once peace became strong enough to survive it. Peace had survived. Honesty had not. "The letter proves the relic false," Gabriel said. "It does not prove the bishop used it to build an army. For that, we need his ledgers." "They are in his palace," Margot said. Maud's eyes brightened with the dangerous joy of an actress offered a final great role. "Tomorrow night Severus hosts the miracle banquet. Every noble family will attend. He has hired a company to perform the Blessed Bishop and the Obedient Poor." "That title lacks suspense," Margot said. "The hired company disappeared this afternoon. Did you frighten them?" "I explained the artistic difficulties." "Very firmly." Gabriel studied the old woman. "How firmly?" Maud opened and closed her shears. Margot felt hope stir for the first time since the square. "Then the bishop needs actors," she said. "How fortunate that we are unemployed." Chapter 5. The gentle lady throws a cake. Margot entered the bishop's palace disguised as a narrow-shouldered male musician. She darkened her eyebrows, tucked her curls beneath a cap, and glued a small beard to her chin. Gabriel wore a guard's uniform. Ordinary armor did nothing to make him ordinary. He still looked like a man who could conquer a dining room simply by choosing a chair. Margot smeared soot along his jaw. Lower your head. It is lowered. Your chin is issuing commands. She rubbed the soot with her thumb. A servant hurried behind her, and Gabriel caught Margot by the waist, drawing her closer to let the man pass. Her hand remained against his face. His gaze dropped to her mouth. Do I look like a common guard now? No. You look like a guard who executes cooks for burning bread. I have never executed a cook. Only frightened one into a well. He climbed out. It took Margot a moment to realize he had made a joke. That discovery was more unsettling than his hand at her waist. The banquet hall blazed with candles. Bishop Severus sat beneath a painted image of Saint Orison feeding the hungry. On the bishop's hand glittered a blue sapphire ring large enough to feed an actual hungry family for a year. Grayling was not part of the plan. The goose appeared beneath a table, saw the ring, and became perfectly still. Margot blocked its path. Grayling moved left. She moved left. It moved right. She followed. Do not, she whispered. The goose lowered its head and pretended to peck at crumbs. Margot turned for 1 second. Grayling launched itself onto the bishop's table and pulled the sapphire ring from his finger. Severus shrieked. The goose sprinted between platters. The bishop followed around a roast pig, through a row of servants, and beneath a hanging garland. Grayling ran under the dessert table. Severus bent after it and rose with his head buried in a cream model of the cathedral. Guests screamed. One elderly duchess applauded. Maud ordered the musicians to begin the play, turning chaos into entertainment. Margot slipped through a side door toward the treasury. Lady Alina waited at the end of the corridor. She was 25, with warm brown eyes and dark brown hair braided beneath a pearl net. Her ivory gown covered her from throat to wrist. She looked exactly as court gossip described her, composed, modest, and unlikely to strike anyone with cookware. Margot had hated her from a distance. It was not fair. Alina had never promised Margot anything, but she needed only to stand quietly to receive the future Margot had lost for being too loud. Alina studied her face. Your beard is crooked. So is my last romance. I have learned to continue in public. Alina flinched. The guards are searching for you. Come with me. She opened a small gift room and pulled Margot inside. Why are you helping me? Margot asked. I have not decided that I am. I simply do not want a hanging at my engagement banquet. It creates an unfortunate memory. Margot showed her the key. Alina's eyes widened. Lucian says you invented the story because you are jealous. Lucian also says one joke can weaken the kingdom. If true, the kingdom has serious foundation problems. Must you turn everything into comedy? Must you turn obedience into a personality? The words landed harder than Margot intended. Hurt crossed Alina's face. Before either woman could speak, a child cried in the corridor. They looked out. A kitchen steward held a young serving girl by the wrist. Bread bulged beneath the child's apron. Thief, he said. My mother paid the absolution tax, the girl sobbed. We have not eaten since yesterday. The steward lifted his hand. Alina stepped between them. I told her to take it. My lady, the bishop forbids food leaving his table. Then put every untouched dish in baskets and send them to the South Gate shelter. The steward laughed. You are not queen yet. Alina picked up her enormous engagement cake and pushed it into his face. Cream slid from his nose. Do I look closer now? She asked. Margot revised her opinion of Alina by approximately 1 cake. Alina led her to the treasury. The key opened 3 locks. Inside stood 13 ledgers and a chest of military contracts. The numbers were clear enough for any market grandmother to understand. Severus had taken grain from hungry towns, reported it as charitable offerings, sold it, and purchased armor for a private army. He planned to provoke violence at the relic procession on Saints Bridge, then seize the capital in the name of public order. Margot lifted the heaviest ledger. Lucian's voice came from the corridor. Alina, are you in there? The young woman froze. Margot saw then that gentleness and weakness were not the same. Sometimes gentleness was true character. Sometimes it was the posture a woman learned inside a cage. The door opened. Lucian stared at Margot. Surprise became rage. You came to ruin my engagement. The cake got there first. He reached for her. With both arms around the ledger, Margot could not avoid him. A black-gloved hand closed around Lucian's wrist. Gabriel stood in the doorway. Release her, Lucian said. You first. She belonged to me before she ever knew your name. Gabriel's expression became very still. He drew Margot behind him, his hand resting near her waist with restrained possession. She belongs to no man, he said. But tonight she leaves with me. Lucian reached for his sword. Gabriel caught the hilt before the blade cleared its sheath and shoved him backward. The crown prince landed in a silver dessert cart. Its wheels began to roll. Lucian traveled down the sloping corridor, through the banquet doors, and across the entire hall wearing the ruined cake like a ceremonial helmet. Grayling chased after him, still carrying the bishop's ring. The elderly duchess applauded again. Margot bent over laughing. Gabriel took the heaviest ledger from her. With his free hand, he caught hers. Not her wrist. Not her sleeve. Her hand. Their fingers locked as they ran through the palace. His thumb pressed firmly across her knuckles, as if he needed to know she remained beside him. Chapter 6. A prince discovers regret. They escaped through the kitchen with 3 ledgers, 1 military contract, and half a ham that Grayling refused to abandon. Back at the Royal Theatre, Maud organized the company into copying teams. Every page had to be duplicated before Severus could reclaim or burn the originals. Actors who had struggled for years to remember 8 lines suddenly developed perfect concentration when the lines involved stolen money. Margot worked beside Alina until dawn. The young woman had left the banquet beneath a servant's cloak. Without pearls and formal posture, she looked younger and much more tired. I thought he loved you only before he loved me, Alina said quietly. Margot dipped her pen. He may have loved us both. Alina looked startled. That does not excuse him, Margot continued. A man's feelings are not a pardon written by heaven. Lucian loved my laughter until it threatened his dignity. He loves your gentleness because he thinks it will never oppose him. I am gentle. I saw what you did to the cake. Alina's mouth twitched. The cake was unusually heavy. A fortunate quality in both desserts and political arguments. The 2 women shared a reluctant smile. Margot's earlier resentment embarrassed her now. She had imagined Alina as a spotless thief who had calmly taken another woman's future. In truth, Alina had been raised in a house where daughters were praised for smoothing every conflict. She had entered her engagement believing sacrifice was the price of goodness. Lucian had not needed to silence her. The world had completed the task before they met. By breakfast, the evidence showed a danger larger than theft. Severus had placed armed agents among poor districts with orders to encourage an attack on the cathedral. If citizens rioted during the final relic procession in 3 days, his private army would occupy the capital and arrest anyone he named an enemy of the faith. We cannot explain 13 ledgers to a city in 3 days, Captain Brand said. No, Margot agreed. But we can explain a fox stealing bread. She wrote a street play before noon. In The Holy Fox and the Hungry Hens, a purple fox sold a chicken bone to villagers, taxed them for touching it, then used their coins to hire rats with spears. The plot required no legal education. By evening, companies were performing it in 6 markets. By the next morning, children were chasing tax collectors while shouting, "Mind the Holy Fox." Gabriel guarded each performance from the edge of the crowd. He wore a plain dark coat instead of armor. Nothing concealed his height, broad shoulders, or watchful intensity. Whenever a stranger moved too quickly toward Margot, Gabriel shifted 1 step closer. He never interrupted her. He never told her where to stand. He simply made danger reconsider its schedule. At the 3rd market performance, Lucian appeared alone. He wore the blue cloak he had used years ago when he came secretly to Margot's plays. Dried cream remained in one seam, and Grayling's pursuit had torn off the gold clasp. I need to speak with you, he said. Gabriel moved beside Margot. Alone, Lucian added. No, Gabriel said. Margot touched Gabriel's forearm. I can manage him. His jaw tightened. I know. Then why do you look ready to remove a royal limb? Maud leaned from behind the puppet stage. Moon Wolf, dear. Not Moon Monk. Gabriel stepped 10 paces away. It was a respectful distance, and exactly close enough to break Lucian's hand before it reached Margot. Lucian looked at her. I have not forgotten us. You merely selected a more convenient future. I truly loved you. I know. The answer silenced him. For weeks, Margot had tried to convince herself that Lucian had never loved her. It was easier to grieve a fraud than a real affection that failed its first difficult test. But he had loved her. He had loved the sharpness of her mind, the warmth of her bed, and the way she could turn his loneliness into laughter. Then he inherited a crown and discovered that love was not the only thing he wanted. "I believed you when you loved me," she said. "I also believed you when you became afraid of me. The worst part was not learning your love was false. It was learning your love required me to become smaller every day." His eyes reddened. "I can end my engagement. Stop these plays, and I will bring you back to the palace. We can begin again." Margot felt something like pity. "You do not want me back. You want proof that leaving me did not make you a coward. That is not true. Then why does your offer still require my silence?" Lucian had no answer. He lifted a hand toward her cheek. Gabriel took one step. Grayling was faster. The goose shot from beneath the puppet stage, seized the loose edge of Lucian's blue cloak, and ran. The cloth tightened across his throat. He stumbled after it, clutching at the fastening. Grayling released the cloak at the corner. Lucian pitched forward into a cart of sheep manure. The audience applauded, convinced it was an improved ending to the play. Gabriel returned to Margot's side. "Finished? You appear pleased." "I am not. Your left eyebrow is celebrating." "My eyes and eyebrows reject royal censorship." Margot stared. He had stolen her line with a perfectly straight face. Then he smiled. It was a small, genuine smile, transforming his severity into something unexpectedly young. Her heart gave one hard, foolish beat. Chapter 7. The kiss above the theater. That night Margot found Gabriel on the theater roof, studying the streets that led to Saint's Bridge. Wind moved through his black hair. The moon silvered one side of his face. She climbed beside him with 2 cups of hot cider. "You are poor company for a man considering treason," he said. "I brought cinnamon." Treason rarely receives cinnamon. He accepted the cup. They stood in silence while lights flickered across the city. "Will you return to him?" Gabriel asked. Margot turned. "No." She answered so quickly that he looked at her. "Do you want me to?" she asked. "No." "Why not?" His gaze settled on her. The commander who had faced armies without blinking appeared to find one direct woman considerably more troublesome. "He is unworthy of you." "Is that the only reason?" Gabriel set down his cider. He lifted one hand and brushed the corner of her mouth where spirit gum had irritated the skin. "No." The answer moved between them like heat. Margot's back touched the low stone wall. Gabriel came closer but stopped before their bodies met. The restraint in him was as clear as desire. He wanted her. He also intended to let her choose every inch. "What happens," she asked, "if the prince touches me again?" "I remind myself that you can defend yourself." "And after that?" "I imagine breaking furniture." "His furniture?" "At first." She laughed softly. "Are you jealous, Commander?" "Yes." His honesty stole the joke she had prepared. Margot touched the front of his coat. Beneath the heavy cloth, his heart beat fast. She had expected someone like Gabriel to hide desire behind command. Instead, he offered it without making it her burden. "I am not a prize taken from Lucian," she said. "I know. I will not trade one man who wants me quiet for another who wants me obedient." "I know. You say that very confidently. You carry a skillet." She rose on her toes and kissed him. For one startled heartbeat, Gabriel did not move. Then one arm came around her waist, and the other hand settled at the side of her neck. He drew her against him with controlled strength. His mouth was warm, firm, and far less restrained than the rest of him. Margot caught his coat in both fists. The roof, the city, and the approaching danger tilted away. She felt the steady pressure of his palm against her back and the careful stroke of his thumb beneath her ear. When he finally lifted his head, his forehead rested against hers. "I do not share well," he said. "I am not a loaf of bread. I do not enjoy watching him reach for you." He did not reach very far. "Because the goose was faster than I was." Margot laughed against his mouth. He kissed her again, this time slowly enough to make her knees uncertain. Footsteps sounded below the roof door. Margot raised one finger. "Grayling, do not come up." The steps stopped. After a pause, an orange beak appeared beneath the door and deposited Lucian's missing gold clasp. The beak withdrew. Gabriel looked at the clasp. "It obeys you?" "Only about interrupting romance. I have trained it carefully." They stayed on the roof until the cider cooled. Gabriel told her little about his childhood, because little remained to tell. The church had taken him from an orphan house at 7. After the wolf ritual, priests rewarded control and punished fear. Soldiers had become his first family. Command had become the only shape in which he knew how to exist. You were a child, Margot said. I survived. That is not the same as being unharmed. He looked toward the moon. She did not force him to answer. Instead, she told him how she first walked onto a stage at 12 after an actress fell ill. Margot had forgotten every line, tripped over a wooden grave, and announced to the audience that the dead man had built it poorly. The crowd laughed. For the first time in her life, fear became applause. So you kept making fear funny, Gabriel said. It was useful. Is it still? The question stayed with her long after they climbed down. Chapter 8. When the joke stopped working by the following afternoon, the holy fox and the hungry hens had spread through the capital. People refused the absolution tax. Market women pelted collectors with turnips. A cooper painted a chicken bone over his door and wrote, "No saints accepted without feathers." Severus responded by sending his private soldiers into the poor districts. They broke stalls, seized grain, and arrested anyone carrying a copied ledger. By dusk, thousands gathered outside the royal theater. Some brought empty sacks and tax notices. Others brought axes, torches, and years of rage. "Lead us to the cathedral," a baker shouted. "Burn the bishop's palace," cried a woman whose son had died in a debtor work camp. Margot climbed the theater steps. Gabriel and the northern soldiers stood nearby but kept their weapons sheathed. The crowd wanted a hero. Worse, it wanted permission. Margot held up the chicken bone. "Before we begin, perhaps we should ask the hen whether she supports property damage." Only a few people laughed. A stone flew from the rear of the crowd. It struck a boy above the eye. He went down beneath pushing bodies while his mother screamed. Margot's next joke disappeared. The crowd surged. Someone grabbed her shoulder and demanded that she lead them. She was shoved against a pillar hard enough to lose her breath. Black-armored soldiers formed a wall, using shields rather than blades. Gabriel forced his way through the crush. He found Margot, pulled her and the injured boy against his chest, and carried both behind the shield line. "Back," he commanded. His voice cut through the noise. The front rows stopped. Margot gave the boy to his mother. Blood ran down his cheek, but he was conscious. She climbed the steps again. Her hands shook. Her knees shook. She had once believed courage meant the absence of fear, a theory possible only for people with limited imagination. Real courage was knowing the next words might make everyone hate you, and saying them anyway. "The holy bone is false," she shouted. The square quieted. But the people who believed in it were not fools. 30 years ago, that lie ended a war. Mothers got their sons back. Children lived long enough to become grandparents. Faith did not steal your bread. Severus did. A man raised an axe. "Then we burn his church and take it back." No. The answer came without humor. "If you attack tonight, the first people to die will be poor people at the front, not the bishop behind stone walls. If you burn the shelter and hurt innocent priests, you become exactly the violent mob Severus needs. He has soldiers waiting to seize the city after you throw the first torch." Angry voices rose. "So we do nothing? We go to Saint's Bridge tomorrow. Bring empty flour sacks. Bring confiscation orders. Bring the names of everyone his taxes killed. We will read the ledgers where every pilgrim can hear. We will show his soldiers whose hunger paid for their armor. Words will not stop pikes." Margot's throat tightened. "Perhaps not, but I will not lie to you because the truth is less exciting. I cannot promise nobody will be hurt. I can promise that if we begin with murder, the truth will drown in it." Silence followed. An elderly woman near the front lowered her torch. "I will go to the bridge." The baker put down his axe and raised an empty flour sack. One by one, weapons lowered. Margot's legs weakened. Gabriel stepped behind her and placed one steady hand at her waist. He did not hold her up until she gave him a small nod. Then his arm tightened. "You displeased nearly everyone," he murmured. "I noticed. They listened, because I stopped trying to make them like me." He turned her toward him. Respect burned in his dark eyes, deeper and more unsettling than simple desire. "That is why I love you." Margot forgot the crowd. Gabriel appeared to realize only then that he had spoken aloud. The man who had broken a holy banner before 20,000 witnesses looked away. Margot touched his jaw. "You chose an inconvenient time to become shy." "I am not shy. Your right ear disagrees." "Margot." She kissed the corner of his mouth. "Good. Because I was terrified, and I need something worth surviving tomorrow for." His forehead lowered to hers. Around them, people began arranging groups for the march. The city was still frightened and furious. Nothing was solved. But Margot had told the truth without hiding inside a laugh, and the world had not ended. Chapter 9. The faithful woman chooses before dawn. Alina returned to the cathedral residence. Margot knew only what Alina had told her she planned to do: recover the original military contracts and persuade honest priests to attend the bridge. No one could promise she would succeed. Margot spent the dark hours imagining every possible failure. When she began pacing too quickly, Gabriel took her hand and sat her beside him on the stage. "She has courage," he said. "Courage does not prevent locked doors. Neither does worry open them. You are very irritating when sensible. You are irritating at all times." Was that affection? Deep affection? At sunrise, Alina had not returned. The march began without her. Thousands left the poor districts carrying empty sacks, broken tools, tax boards, and wooden plaques painted with names. Maud wore her finest red gown and hid the dead queen's letter inside the bodice. "If I confess to helping manufacture a holy relic," she said, "I refuse to look like a minor character." Grayling marched at the front with Severus's sapphire ring still in its beak. Margot had tried to retrieve it. The goose swallowed it into its mouth and stared at her as though it had never possessed a beak. Gabriel wore black armor, without any sacred symbol. His northern soldiers followed under plain dark banners. He had refused the king's offer to restore his legal command for one day. "A borrowed chain remains a chain," he had said. At the entrance to Saint's Bridge, white-armored private soldiers blocked the road. The river moved cold and fast beneath the stone arches. Pilgrims crowded both banks to witness the relic's final blessing. Bishop Severus stood on a raised platform. The crystal reliquary gleamed behind him. Lucian stood at his right in silver-white ceremonial clothes. His face looked drawn and sleepless. Alina stood at his left. She wore the pearl-colored gown intended for her public betrothal. Her hands were folded. From a distance she looked calm. Margot's stomach sank. Perhaps Alina had lost her nerve. Perhaps Lucian had persuaded her. Perhaps Margot had mistaken one thrown cake for a revolution. Severus raised the speaking horn. "Margot Vale, kneel and confess. The holy relic may yet forgive you." Margot inspected the bridge. "The stones are damp." Nervous laughter moved through the pilgrims. The commander Burin advanced with 6 men. A purple bruise still crossed his nose from Margot's skillet. Gabriel stepped in front of her. "Stand aside," Burin said. "You have no banner, no rank, and no authority." "I still have hands." Burin glanced at the hands that had once lifted him by his breastplate. He retreated half a step, realized everyone saw him do it, and drew his sword. Gabriel did not bother drawing his own. He avoided the blade, caught Burin's wrist, and used the man's charge to send him over the side of the bridge. The river was shallow near the bank. Burin landed face first in waist-deep water. His white cloak floated around him like a surrendering bedsheet. The other soldiers stopped. Margot stepped forward and opened a ledger. The relic procession collected 487,000 silver marks. The bishop reported all of it spent on food. In truth, 1/3 purchased grain, which he sold back to hungry towns. The rest purchased your white armor, your pikes, and the silver powder used against Commander Wolfe. She faced the soldiers. "Widows paid for the metal on your backs. Children paid for the weapons in your hands." Murmurs spread through the line. Severus lifted the horn. "The ledger is false. She is a stage liar who earns money by deceiving audiences." "That is true," Margot called. "I know exactly what a convincing lie requires. Fine clothes, a high platform, and a man who punishes questions." She held up the bone. "A disappointed chicken also helps." Maud climbed the bridge steps. "I made the relic." Cries of anger and grief rose among the pilgrims. One old man dropped to his knees. Maud did not hide. "We made it to end the bone war. It saved lives. Then I remained silent while another man used it to take yours apart. That silence is my sin." Severus smiled. "An actress's confession and a forged letter. Who else believes these women?" "I do." Alina's voice carried from the platform. She walked toward the steps. Lucian caught her wrist. "Return to your place," he said. Alina tried to pull free. He held tighter. Her free hand disappeared into the folds of her skirt. She drew out a silver dinner fork and drove it through the leather edge of Lucian's boot into the wooden platform. The fork missed his foot, but the boot remained nailed in place. Lucian released her with a shout. Alina lifted her skirts and ran down the steps. She carried a packet of original contracts beneath one arm. "I saw the bishop's underground armory," she told the crowd. Her voice shook, but she did not stop. "I saw grain rotting behind locked doors while families starved. My faith commands me not to bear false witness. It does not command me to protect powerful liars." Severus pointed at her. "You betray God." "No. I have finally stopped mistaking you for him." Alina removed Lucian's engagement ring and threw it into the river. Grayling leaned over the bridge rail, visibly distressed by such waste. Lucian pulled his damaged boot free. "Alina, come back. You do not understand what you are doing." She turned. Tears shone in her eyes. "I thought your silence was caution, and your fear was duty. Now I know you simply expect every woman who loves you to be brave in your place." Margot felt the last hard piece of resentment toward Alina dissolve. They had both been asked to shrink for the same man. Margot had been told to speak less. Alina had been trained never to speak at all. Chapter 10. The wolf who would not bite Lucian looked from Alina to Margot, as if one of them might still rescue him from himself. "I can order Severus arrested," he said. "Margot, stand with me now. I will declare you innocent before the kingdom. You still believe freedom is something you grant me." His face went pale. Severus seized the speaking horn. "Ring the bells." 12 silver bells sounded from the bridge towers. Gabriel folded at the waist. Dark lines spread up his neck. His gloved fingers clawed at the stone. Burin climbed from the river and blew a silver whistle, while private soldiers threw consecrated powder into the wind. "Look!" Severus shouted. "This is the monster she brought among believers." Pilgrims recoiled. Margot ran to Gabriel. He lifted his head. His eyes had already become a wolf's. "Stay away," he forced out. "Yesterday you said you loved me. That is why." 2 soldiers rushed her from behind. Gabriel turned and pulled Margot against his chest. A silver chain struck the back of his armor. He growled in pain but kept his body between her and the second blow. Margot heard his heart hammering beneath the breastplate. His arms enclosed her with frightening strength and perfect care. Burin reached the bridge carrying a pike dusted with silver. Gabriel was trapped halfway through the change and could not turn without exposing Margot. An actor nearby carried a painted wooden hammer from the street play. Margot grabbed it. She ran at Burin with both hands on the handle. He had not expected the playwright to attack. His pike hesitated. The hammer struck his breastplate. It was hollow wood, but Maud had filled the head with sand to keep the stage wind from moving it. Burin flew backward and went over the bridge rail for the second time. He landed in the same muddy shallows. "This performance," Margot panted, "does not include an encore." The private army advanced. Gabriel's armor split at the straps. The great black wolf rose on Saint's Bridge, standing between Margot and a forest of pikes. He did not attack. The bells hammered at his mind. Silver smoke burned his nose and eyes. His claws cut grooves in the stone. Still he stayed in place, guarding her. Severus's triumph faltered. "Ring harder. Make it kill." The black wolf lowered its body in pain. It turned its head toward Margot. The look felt like farewell. She wrapped both arms around its neck. Corsford pressed against her wet eyes. "You are not the weapon they made," she whispered near its ear. "You are the man who broke the flag. You are the commander who fed northern villages before his own officers. You are the jealous fool who asked whether I would return to a prince and pretended the answer did not matter." The wolf made a low sound. "That last part is not dignified. I know, but it is yours. Hold on to it." An arrow flew from the platform. Gabriel rolled over Margot, taking the silver-tipped shaft across his shoulder armor. The impact drove them into the bridge rail. Old stone cracked beneath Margot's back. She felt open air. Lucian was nearest. He lunged and caught a piece of her skirt, but his fork-torn boot slipped. The cloth ripped from his fingers. Margot fell. Wind tore at her gown. The river rushed below. A black shape leaped after her. The wolf caught the back of her cloak between its teeth. Its body struck a bridge support. Foreclaws found a narrow ledge. Its hind legs hung above the water, while Margot dangled from the tearing cloth. Gabriel's shoulder bled where the silver arrow had scraped him. His jaws remained locked. "Let go of the cloak," she called. "You will fall." The wolf growled around the fabric. "That is an order." He bit down harder, apparently remembering that she held no military rank. Actors lowered a rope from the bridge. The cloak began to split. With one powerful movement, Gabriel swung his head and threw Margot into the rope loop. People hauled her upward. The force tore his claws from the ledge. The black wolf fell toward the river. Grayling stood on the broken rail and spread its wings. Moonlight broke through the clouds. The goose's small shadow expanded across the water into the form of an enormous gray wolf. The spirit ran down a path of silver light, caught the falling black wolf on its back, and carried him toward the shallows. Every pilgrim saw it. Grayling had never been an ordinary animal. It was the old guardian of the road, wearing the comic body of a goose because the poor trusted common creatures more than jeweled saints. It belonged to no bishop and no king. It belonged to the path and to those who traveled with little protection. The gray wolf spirit threw back its head. All 12 silver bells cracked. Silence covered the bridge. Grayling folded its wings, pecked at grass between 2 stones, and behaved as if ancient revelation should not delay breakfast. Chapter 11. Every villain meets the river. Margot was pulled onto the bridge, but she did not remain there. She wrapped the rescue rope around her waist and slid down the bank, ruining what remained of her red gown. Gabriel had returned to human form in the shallows. Torn black cloth and broken armor covered him well enough for modesty, though Margot would not have cared if the entire kingdom saw his knees. He was alive. She splashed through the water and dropped beside him. His shoulder wound was shallow, but exhaustion had left him unable to stand. Margot threw both arms around him. "You disobedient man." His voice was rough against her hair. "You have no rank." "I have a skillet." He laughed once, weakly, and buried his face against her neck. Above them, Severus recovered from the broken bells. He snatched the crystal reliquary and attempted to flee the platform. Grayling noticed. The goose launched itself from the bridge rail and landed on the bishop's hat. Its beak caught his left ear. Severus screamed and spun. His purple robe wrapped around his ankles. He rolled down the platform steps, lost the reliquary, and crashed headfirst into the broad wooden basin used to wash pilgrims' feet. The holy bone landed beside him in the cloudy water. Grayling stepped onto his back and stamped twice. Then it coughed up the sapphire ring. The jewel struck the back of Severus's head and disappeared into the foot basin. Laughter rolled across the bridge. It was not gentle laughter. It was the sound of frightened people discovering that a tyrant could look ridiculous, and therefore mortal. The private soldiers stared at their white armor. They looked at the empty flour sacks raised by the crowd. One young soldier let his pike fall. Another followed. Soon weapons struck stone from one end of the bridge to the other. Burin attempted to climb from the shallows for the 3rd time. Alina walked to the bank and placed one pearl-colored shoe over his fingers. "My lady," he grunted, "that is not dignified. I am reconsidering dignity." She lifted her foot. Burin reached for the edge, caught river mud, and slid backward with a splash. Lucian remained on the platform. Wind had disordered his blonde hair. His white coat bore cake cream, dust, and one streak of sheep manure that no royal servant had dared mention. "I will arrest Severus," he called. "The crown will restore order." No one moved until Alina handed the original contracts to the city magistrate. No one cheered when Lucian repeated the order. The magistrate, seeing thousands of witnesses and hundreds of surrendered soldiers, finally commanded the civic guard to take the bishop into custody. Severus emerged from the foot basin with the chicken bone stuck to his cheek. "You cannot judge me with evidence stolen by a beast," he shouted. Grayling bit his ankle. The civic guards had to carry him away because he refused to lower his robe enough to walk while a goose remained attached to it. Lucian descended toward Margot. "You see? I have done it. I chose you over him." Gabriel tried to rise. Margot kept one hand on his chest. "Rest," she told him. "I can finish this." Lucian stopped at the water's edge. "Come back to the palace. I will end the engagement. I will restore your theater and make you royal playwright. No one will ever silence you again." For a moment Margot saw the life she once wanted. A warm room in the palace. Her name printed on official playbills. Lucian beside her, beautiful and sorry. No more traveling in rain. No more bargaining for onions after poor ticket sales. The vision no longer fit. "Will the palace approve my plays before I perform them?" He hesitated. "Only to protect the crown. Will I be allowed to joke about you?" "In private, of course." "Then you have learned nothing." His face crumpled. "I love you. I believe you loved me. But I will not return." He looked as if her calm answer hurt more than anger could have. "I never needed you to become another man," Margot said. "I needed you to do the right thing when it cost you something." Every time that moment came, You waited for a woman to pay the price first. Lucian stepped backward. His damaged boot caught the leg of a ceremonial incense burner. Cold ash fell over his head and shoulders. Nobody rushed to clean him. Gabriel sat up in the water. His arm went around Margot's waist, not to claim her before Lucian, but because she leaned willingly into him. "Is he gone?" Gabriel asked. "He is standing 6 feet away." "Then no. Your hearing survived the bells." "Unfortunately." Lucian closed his eyes. Perhaps even a prince knew when the final curtain had fallen. Chapter 12. What truth does after victory? Victory did not repair roofs, return dead children, or decide what people should believe. Margot discovered this the following week. Severus went before a public court. The ledgers, contracts, hidden armory, and testimony of his own soldiers made denial impossible. He was stripped of office and property. The court ordered him to repay all 13 towns and serve 3 months of labor in each one. His first duty was cleaning the shallows beneath Saint's Bridge. Grayling attended every morning. Whenever Severus leaned on his shovel, the goose pecked his calf. By the 4th day he moved with the enthusiasm of a man pursued by divine motivation. Burin and the officers who had beaten citizens were sentenced to rebuild the South Gate shelter. They carried stone under the supervision of the serving girl Alina had saved at the banquet. The child possessed a whistle and an exacting sense of justice. Burin jumped whenever she blew it, even if Grayling was nowhere nearby. Lucian kept his title, but the public hearing forced him to admit that he had known the tax was cruel and remained silent because he feared church opposition to his succession. He sold 3 hunting estates to compensate families and withdrew from public celebrations. He wrote Margot 12 letters. The first said he forgave her involvement with Gabriel. Margot folded it into a paper boat. Grayling sank it in a wash basin. The second promised she could continue writing after marriage, provided the palace reviewed each script. Maud used it beneath the short leg of a table. The final letter contained no offer and no condition. It said only, "I understood too late." Margot placed that one in a wooden box. She did not keep it because she planned to return. She kept it because pretending Lucian had never mattered would be one more lie. He had loved her. He had hurt her. He had regretted it. None of those truths entitled him to her future. Alina sold her wedding silver and opened a public grain house managed by the widows of the taxed towns. At first, visitors called her the abandoned future queen. She hung a sign over the door, "Grain accepted." Opinions about women's marriages refused. Margot stood beneath it and laughed until her stomach hurt. "You have corrupted me," Alina said. "No, you have finally admitted you came with teeth." Their friendship was not sweet every hour. Alina believed every bean sack required a numbered ribbon. Margot believed any accounting system that needed ribbons had become too ambitious. They argued over budgets, sermons, and whether cream cake was now a political weapon. But when a nobleman said Alina had ruined Lucian's life, Margot poured soup in his lap. When a reviewer called Margot an ungrateful vulgarian, Alina purchased the front row and stared at him through the entire performance until he left during intermission. Maud became the most popular witness at the relic hearings. Each time she told the story of the royal hen, she added one detail. By the 6th telling, the chicken could open kitchen doors. By the 10th, it understood 3 regional dialects and had rejected a marriage proposal from the palace rooster. "Respect history," Margot told her. "My dear, I am 63. History should respect me." Faith proved more complicated. Some pilgrims smashed their household saints. Others wept over the empty reliquary. Many said the courage they received while praying had been real, even if the bone was not. Alina did not leave the church. She gathered priests who had opposed Severus and helped turn the pilgrimage houses into free shelters. She said truth did not have to destroy faith, but a faith afraid of truth was merely a locked room. Margot did not understand all of Alina's theology. She approved of the shelter soup. Gabriel refused every offer to restore the sacred banner. Northern soldiers elected him commander under a new oath to living citizens and published law, never to a relic or priest. He also forbade kneeling. The first veteran who dropped to one knee from habit was lifted upright so quickly that he lost his hat. "The ground is not dangerous," Margot told Gabriel afterward. "Habits are. You are going to terrify every polite guest at our dinners." He turned toward her. "Our dinners?" Margot realized what she had said. The theater's dinners. General dinners. Dinners as an institution. Gabriel's slow smile was unbearable. Of course. At the full moon, he still changed into a black wolf. Without the banner's control, transformation brought strength instead of agony. Margot sometimes rode on his back beyond the city walls. Once, she remarked that Lucian's horse had also been very fast. Gabriel immediately increased his speed, until she wrapped both arms around his neck. "You are jealous," she shouted into the wind. His tail struck her boot. Grayling followed them only to the forest edge. The Guardian had work of its own. It chased thieves, returned lost coppers to roadside shrines, and inspected every poor traveler's basket in case peas required protection. It would not live indoors. During storms, Margot left a straw-lined box beneath the theater porch. Grayling pulled out all the straw, spread it on Gabriel's folded black cloak, and slept there instead. Gabriel regarded the arrangement in silence. "It has chosen expensive bedding," Margot said. "It has chosen my cloak. You are learning to share." Poorly. Chapter 13. The theater without permission before the first snow, Gabriel asked Margot to walk with him through the Western District. He led her to the abandoned Royal Theater. The roof had been repaired. Warm yellow plaster covered the walls. New glass filled the windows, and a carved wooden sign hung above the entrance. The free stage. Margot stopped in the street. Workers had removed the private royal box. The best seats now had extra space for older patrons and anyone who struggled with stairs. Free benches filled the rear gallery. People without coin could pay with firewood, beans, sewing work, or a story worth telling. A small door had been cut beside the main entrance for Grayling. A sign above it read, "Road Guardians Welcome. Silver bells forbidden." Margot swallowed. "What is this?" Gabriel handed her a rolled document. The permanent charter gave ownership to a council of actors, builders, neighborhood women, and audience members. Neither crown, church, nor army could review a script before performance. Margot had final artistic authority, but she could never sell the building to a private lord. "You gave me a theater." "No. I returned a place where you do not need permission to speak." Her eyes burned. Margot disliked crying in front of people. She especially disliked crying before a man who had seen her fall from a bridge and strike a soldier with a wooden hammer. She cleared her throat. "Does the roof have a warranty?" Gabriel did not permit the joke to carry her away. He cupped her face and wiped a tear with his thumb. "You are allowed to be happy." That sentence undid her. She stepped into him and held on. His arms closed around her, lifting her clear off the street. Her long skirt turned in the wind. Workers cheered from the doorway. "Put me down," she whispered. "You said that when we met. We were strangers. And now?" She looked into his nearly black eyes. "Now I know you rarely listen." He lowered her but kept his hands at her waist. "Margot." The gravity in his voice quieted her. "Marry me." He did not kneel. He offered no jeweled ring and no speech about possession. He stood before her as a man who had sworn never to kneel to power again, and asked a woman who had finally learned to stand in her own truth to stand beside him. Margot studied him. "I have conditions." "Name them." "You may not review my plays before opening night." "Agreed." "You may not execute anyone who laughs at you." "I have never executed a cook." "You see? We are not yet married, and you already avoid the question." His mouth curved. "Anything else?" Margot reached into her sleeve and withdrew a small black flag no larger than her hand. In white thread she had embroidered the words, "Accept N.O. kneeling." The letters leaned in several directions. Sewing was not among her dramatic gifts. "For you," she said. Gabriel received it as solemnly as a battle standard. "I will hang it over our door." "Our door?" "Dinners as an institution." Margot grabbed the front of his coat and kissed him. "Yes," she said against his mouth. "I will marry you." The cheering doubled. Alina ran from inside carrying 3 grain ledgers. Maud shouted that she had wagered the proposal would happen before the first snow and demanded payment from Captain Bran. Grayling pushed between their legs and stole the little flag. "Grayling!" The goose flew onto the stage. It spread the flag in the warmest patch of sunlight, turned 3 times, and lay down on it. Gabriel stopped at the edge of the boards and folded his arms. "That is my gift." Grayling closed its eyes. "It believes you accepted kneeling," Margot said. "I did not." "Explain the distinction." The moon wolf, who had remained unmoved before kneeling armies, crouched in front of a gray goose and attempted to explain private property. Grayling fell asleep. Chapter 14. The last Holy Bone play snow fell on the opening night of the free stage. The line stretched around the block. Older women arrived carrying firewood. Children paid with beans. Northern soldiers came without armor. The Southgate widows occupied the front row. Even pilgrims who had once cursed Margot stood outside waiting for seats. They had not all forgiven her. She had not asked them to. On stage, the crystal reliquary sat beneath a single lamp. The chicken bone rested inside. The magistrate had wanted it destroyed. Margot argued that an object which had ended a war and later fed corruption should not disappear into another convenient silence. People deserved to see its entire history. Maud played the old queen. Alina played a young believer. A narrow actor portrayed Severus with 3 pillows beneath his purple robe because his own stomach lacked authority. Grayling was meant to cross the stage during the trial scene. Instead, it spotted the real Severus in a side row, where prisoners serving public sentences had been brought to watch an educational performance. Severus had spent all day clearing river weeds. The moment he saw the goose, he climbed onto his chair. The audience laughed until the balcony shook. Margot waited behind the curtain. In earlier years, she had kneaded that sound like bread. After Lucian left, she had used each laugh as armor. If she made people happy, perhaps they would not see that she was frightened, lonely, and still wounded by a man she claimed to despise. Now laughter filled the theater, and she did not need to hide inside it. Gabriel stood beside her in a plain black formal coat. His thick dark hair was tied at the nape. Warm stage light softened his severe face, though no drunk audience member would ever mistake softness for permission to misbehave. "Your entrance," he said. "What if they dislike the ending? Let them." That is a surprising opinion from a man who purchased a theater to impress his future wife. "I did not purchase it to impress you." "Why then?" He took her hand. "Because when you tell the truth, you should have a roof." Margot breathed in and walked onto the stage. The audience quieted. She lifted the chicken bone. Everyone expected the famous line. She did not give it to them. "This relic is false," she said. "It once stopped soldiers from killing. It later helped greedy men steal bread. Tonight we will not kneel to it, and we will not burn it. We will remember it." She saw an old pilgrim nod. A young priest wiped his eyes. Alina watched from the wings, calm and steady. Truth does not end when someone says, "This is a lie." Truth asks us to admit that a good intention can become harmful, that faith can be used by cruel people, and that someone who truly loved us can still hurt us. It asks us to remain kind without becoming blind. It asks us to love without becoming small. No one laughed. No one hissed. Maud began to clap. Alina joined her. The audience rose slowly until the entire hall stood in applause. Nobody knelt. Gabriel came onto the stage. He did not take the bone from Margot or step in front of her. He stood beside her and let her hands settle inside his. Grayling finally abandoned Severus. The goose waddled between Margot and Gabriel and spat something bright onto the boards. Alina gasped. It was the engagement ring she had thrown into the river. "When did you find that?" she demanded. Grayling placed one webbed foot over the jewel. Maud laughed. "The guardian believes you wasted an offering." Alina came onto the stage and crouched. It was not an offering. It was a mistake. The goose tilted its head as though considering a difficult theological point. Then it pushed the ring toward her. Alina sold it the next morning and bought enough beans to supply the grain house all winter. After the performance, Margot locked the theater. Snow covered the street. Gabriel waited at the bottom of the steps with white flakes on his black hair. She ran to him. He caught her and tucked her beneath his cloak. "Home?" he asked. "Home." Grayling followed them for half a block, then turned toward the Pilgrim Road. The goose's gray body disappeared into the snow. For one moment, its great wolf shadow traveled beside it beneath the moon. Margot did not call it back. Road guardians belonged to no one. Grayling would appear wherever poor travelers left offerings. It would pursue the next thief, recover the next lost coin, and return during thunderstorms to sleep on Gabriel's forbidden kneeling flag. Gabriel tightened his fingers around hers. "Why are you smiling?" "I was thinking about the chicken." "What about it?" Margot leaned against his shoulder and watched lanterns move across Saint's Bridge. "It died disappointed," she said, "but its bone finally did one honest thing." Gabriel bent and kissed her. There were no silver bells, no prince, no bishop, and no goose to interrupt them. There were only 2 people who had stopped living on their knees, choosing each other beneath a dangerous and beautiful moon. Follow Moonlit Romance Library for more brave hearts, dark legends, and love stories lit by moonlight.